Greetings, everybody. Welcome back. It's UK here. Carrying on the games I have played monologues. Don't know what I should call it. Series. And we're going to continue with the classic World of Darkness games, which we are nearing the end of. And today we are dealing with a short-lived game called Hunter the Reckoning, which was released early 2000s, I think. Don't quote me on that. As part of the line of products that would lead to the end of the world. And unlike the other games, in Hunter the Reckoning, you basically played a human being. You weren't a monster in the sense that the other World of Darkness games were. You were instead a normal, everyday Joe, or Jane, who had been given supernatural abilities by some sort of otherworldly entity. It's believed, by the way, the rulebook is filled with angelic script, that it's supposed to be you are gifted by angels or God or something like that. And the idea is your characters would go out and they would be hunting down monsters. System was basically the same. Stats were the same, skills were basically the same. The abilities obviously varied because they were all to do with hiding from monsters or fighting monsters or learning things and what have you. And you had different types, just as you had clans, tribes, I want to say covens for mage, but I'm not 100% sure on that. In this, you had types, I can't remember what they were called, but you had things like, I think they're called Avengers, which were people who were looking for revenge for the monster or monsters that had harmed them or their family or friends. You had ones, I want to say visionaries, who were more about studying the various creatures. You had people who were willing to sacrifice themselves to save people. It was all a bit odd, to be honest, and I kind of found it, although it fits with the coming up end of the world storyline they were running, I always found it a bit odd because technically you already had 2 and a bit Monster Hunter books already in the game. I want to say one of them was called Hunters Hunted. Someone out there with a bit more memory of these things might correct me if I'm wrong, but that basically gave rules for characters playing like FBI agents or police or normal everyday people who had no special abilities, but basically allows you to play kind of an X-Files-y type chronicle instead. There was a book called The Inquisition, which allowed you to play the monster hunters of the Catholic Church, where you did have some sort of faith abilities. And the third wasn't really Monster Hunters, but there was a book released for Mage called The Ascension, The Arcanum. The Arcanum had been mentioned in the old vampire game and werewolf, I think, before Mage came out. And the Arcanum were kind of like the Watchers from the Highlander TV series. They didn't go out hunting monsters, but they had fairly accurate records detailing the supernatural, and they were Watchers. And it kind of felt really odd to me that you had these 3 potential mortal hunter type character games built into the system, because they weren't games by themselves. You needed one of the other rules, but they were sort of like source books that allows you to play these sort of characters. So I suppose this was just taking that to an extreme by making you kind of more than human but not superhuman, and allowing you to fight monsters. I only ever ran this once. I bought it mainly so I could have them as NPCs for the vampire game I was running. I remember the one chronicle or one adventure, maybe 2 adventures that I ran, I had the players make themselves, that good old role-playing trope. And one of their friends had accidentally killed somebody in a hit-and-run accident, and in their panic had come up to them for help because this particular individual had come back as a revenant, which was something from one of the Wraith books. Hunting him down looking for revenge. and whatever happened, they were suddenly tapped to try and save him. And it made for a good couple of session thing, but it was never a game that I was particularly enamoured by. And I don't really know why. I think the potential for it just wasn't quite there for me. I mean, this was before we had the Supernatural TV show where we had a Monster of the Week show with a larger overarching plot. And maybe things might have been a bit different had it been the other way around. But I kind of found the idea of trying to work out a fleshed out chronicle that wasn't just going to be a Monster of the Week thing rather difficult. I think the game was probably itself all right, but it just didn't grab me. I think White Wolf did a good job of trying to tie things in a little bit. I kind of remember there was an online thing for it. I want to call it HunterNet or Hunter.net or something like that, where they put sort of like hints and clues and what have you to the ongoing sort of whatever their plan was for it on there, and players and storytellers had to sort of like hunt through it. I didn't really pay much attention. I don't know whether the New World of Darkness ever got an equivalent, because I'd sort of lost interest by that point in it. But it'd be interesting to see what that was like if it did. Ultimately, for me, as I say, Hunter the Reckoning didn't really grab me in any way, shape, or form. And they did end up being used a couple of times as NPCs in Vampire Chronicles. So, did you guys play this one? Have any thoughts on it? I don't know. Anything I've missed in what I'm going on about there? I say it was a very odd choice of game, especially when you consider that the other games are all about playing monsters. So, and these aren't really monsters. So, anyway, yes, let me know what you think. Did you play it? Did you run it? And exactly how did your Chronicles work out without it just devolving into a Monster of the Week show? Anyway, thank you for listening to this ramble. And take care and good gaming. See you next time. Take care.